Hello, welcome to the CyberDudes podcast. It is episode 9. I am Robin, and here's
Omar Sangri.
So, CyberDudes podcast news up to August 18th. It's been a couple of weeks since our last episode. We've had multiple stories. The weirdest 3 billion people data breach ever is one that has come out from The Verge. Now, this is something, a guy in California has filed a lawsuit against a Florida-based background check company and data broker called National Public Data. And one of the quotes from The Verge says, this is a source of a massive data leak that includes information like social security numbers and more on reportedly 3 billion people. Now, I don't think that really tracks all that well for reasons we'll talk about in a moment. But this trove of data, somebody's got into the database, scraped it all, thrown it on the dark web for sale at $3.5 million. A group called DoD US, and allegedly 2.9 billion records. But the population of the US is only 350 million. I don't know the maths on this. I'd hazard to guess there's not been 3 billion Americans since the beginning of the Social Security system. So this does go to the kind of validity of the hack and the leak and what is in it and whether it's actually valid data or not. Which I think is a lot of the argument for allaying people's fears about, oh my God, am I going to get my identity stolen?
I mean, are you going to get your identity stolen? Yes. Just a matter of when and what your resiliency plans are after it happens. Like our good friend, I say friend, he doesn't know who the heck we are yet. Our good friend Troy Hunt over at Have I Been Pwned. It pretty much says that, right? It's not a matter of if, but when. I'm just trying to stay at least a couple steps ahead. I don't know where they're getting the 3 bill number from. They must be counting certain records 10, 15 times. I was trying to really pour over the specifics here, but it seems as though the catchy headline is not nearly as valid as one would think, which is a good thing, but it's not a good thing when you're trying to do reliable reporting of this sort of event. I could see people going, hey, I can't even trust what the news tells me now about different breaches. So, I'd say, of course, do your due diligence, take a look. But I don't, if this had been a legitimate hack or of the equivalent of a third to maybe closer to a half, I don't know how many billions of people are we on the planet at this point. I think there would have been a little bit more a groundbreaking type reaction to it, is my opinion.
Yeah. Well, this is it. And I think you hit the point there quite handily. And 2.9 billion records. It's a big scary number. It's kind of just sort of sexy headlines, attention grabbing sort of stuff. There's another quote from that article from The Verge saying the hacker and malware tracker VX Underground on X, Twitter, also looked at data and noted it didn't contain records for people who use data opt-out services, supporting the idea that it came from a data aggregator, which makes an awful lot of sense because whenever you go onto a data opt-out service, one that I've used is Incogni, Discover Card have their own in there. You can see all the records that kind of come up, and there'll be multiple of you on the basis of multiple addresses that you've been associated with. So if you're moving every 12 months, for example, there'll be multiple records that are associated with you. But also, it sounds like kind of what has happened to a degree here as well is the equivalent of marketers scraping off LinkedIn and kind of just making guesses on roughly correlated information to actually create a database of stuff. There's nothing that's to say that that's actually accurate.
It's a little scary. It's scary. It rattles the sabers, but it also goes contrary to something that any professional in this industry tries to stay away from as much as possible unless they're trying to sell some books, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. As long as you can, just the facts, nothing but the facts, ma'am. if you can go that route, I think it instills a bit more trust in the sources and a bit more trust in any remediation activities that are advertised or sent your way. This does no help to anyone except for maybe the fact that, hey, data aggregators are a thing. They're horrible. I don't have a strategy or tactic for how to combat them. It's just one of those
Yeah.
facts of life. But they're a thing, and
this
they're awful.
well, this is the biggest problem. Yeah, data brokers are. It's an awful industry. The biggest problem with this is that they have absolutely no permission to scrape any of this data. So quite frankly, I mean, yeah, this is a national public data. They're being sued in California, but this is a Florida-based company, and quite frankly, this is one of the most stereotypically low-life and egregious examples I can think of the kind of avaricious behavior that I've heard come out of Florida. And that honestly is, I think that's saying something. Also, I mean, if you're a Floridian and you're offended by this, I am not sorry, to be honest. You know, there's a reason why the Deep South disowned you as a state.
Oh my lord! But
this is the
it
Florida
really is.
man of cybersecurity stories,
And it's like and they pick the wrong state to do it against. Really, like of all the states that you're gonna pick a fight on this battlefield with, California's not the one, baby. It's just not.
Nope.
Right. Like because they're one of the few states that actually has something resembling a cohesive take on their citizens' privacy, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, any
Florida,
of those specific states. You don't want to screw with regard to that, and Massachusetts as well. I don't think you want to screw with them from a data security perspective. Yep. I don't think frankly, I'm not worried necessarily about this. I think to your point earlier, you got to accept this as a reality of when, not if you are worried about your credit. I mean, the advice that is floating around on the net at the moment is, make sure that you know how to freeze your credit if you are worried about it and when something does start looking odd or suspicious. Keep an eye on your bank statements. I mean, honestly, I only a few weeks ago, I was having somebody trying to buy concert tickets through SeatGeek with a credit card that I seldom use, but I was checking through the app and said, okay, that's not right. That's fraud. So that all got sorted out. But it's all about being aware and just keeping tabs on what it is that's going on with regards to your financials. Another story towards the start of the news cycle relates back to mid-July. Microsoft says Delta ignored Satya Nadella's offer of help with the CrowdStrike issue. I don't want to go too deep into this one, but it goes back to what we said in the last episode. It's really more of a Delta problem than anything else. It sounds like. They're the only people who are really kicking off about this. Next one we've got, Trump campaign says its internal messages hacked by Iran. Now, this has been all over the news. Absolutely not surprising in any way, shape or form. If we remember back to 2016, the Democratic National Convention's emails were all hacked. Microsoft raised this, that over the past several months we have seen emergence of significant influence activity by Iranian actors. 3 news outlets in the States were approached by a man known only by the pseudonym Robert and was offered all of this material. They have, all 3 of them, including, I think it includes the Washington Post and the New York Times, news outlets often accused of being left-leaning rather than right, have refused to release all of this information, probably because they think that they're going to get spanked on some sort of election tampering kind of stuff if that really happens. So some of the information that has been leaked goes into reasons as to why JD Vance was chosen as Trump's running mate in the upcoming election. Now, we do have a little bit of inside information on this one. We know the key reason that Vance was chosen to be Trump's running mate. And it all comes down to cost, ultimately. when you take 2016 and 2020 campaign signs, and all you have to do is change P and E to V and A to get Trump Pence to Trump Vance, I mean, you're saving money on your campaign. It really is as simple as that. JD Vance has been chosen just as a matter of convenience, because there's no other explanation for why you choose someone who steps on so many political rakes in such a short time.
This honestly, whenever anyone asks me why I don't run for anything, I go, because this is, no. Just no. Because I can't, I'm not filtered, I'm not refined, like, I have, some pretty ardent views on certain issues. The cost thing, man, like that's going to stick with me, honestly, Robin, where it's just, that's one of those takes I'm going to run up and tell the wife when we're done.
If you
That's
can
funny.
change, turns out Roger Stone may not be the most cyber savvy man in the Trump campaign. His personal email was allegedly breached as part of the effort to target.
What do you mean, his Hotmail account, like his AOL
trove
account? Is he one of those?
Something like that. Right. I mean, it's a spear phishing / whaling attempt.
MySpace,
effectively.
MySpace. Listen, my one very lukewarm, non-scintillating take on this whole Iran stuff is, I wish the Iron Sheik was still alive. Right, like that character, I feel like that he's still alive in the Twitter /X universe. I really could see an awesome, like, eyeball generating campaign if he just went full heel and said, I'm the one trying to hack into both campaigns, right, as a gag. But Iran is trying to do cyber stuff to the US. I'm flabbergasted. Like,
we never saw that coming a million miles away.
Right? Come on, man. Like, this is, and it's, then there's news, there's tidbits where they're accusing Iran just because it came after, it was, at first at least, before any of this was verified, it was just, hey, Iran, Microsoft said Iran was poking around its own environment, and then, it's the Iranians. They hacked us, right? And it's just like, listen, it's, is water wet? Like, this stuff goes on all the time. Everyone's doing it to everybody. It's scarier now because it's our election, right, coming up in this country. But,
yep.
I mean, yeah, it's news, but is it? Like,
Another thing that's not really news is Texas is suing General Motors for selling driver data analytics to insurance companies. I do not want to go into this one. I'm really not sure why this has suddenly made it back into the sort of public awareness or zeitgeist, whatever it is, because this is something that's been known about for years. Your cars do rat on you, and
all the time.
That is just a thing. Turn off all of those connected functionalities. Leading carbon black industrial supplier Orion loses $60 million in a business email compromise scam. So they've been targeted by people who have hijacked presumably a supplier's email address or done a very, very good imitation of it and have lost $60 million as a result of it. This, frankly, for me, is a very real reminder that good cybersecurity is a far broader issue than just a technology one. In this particular instance, this is a remarkable lack of sound financial controls to let $60 million just go out the window.
That shouldn't even be possible, man. Like, that ultimately, the takes I've seen, I completely agree with. There should not be, like, 16 people should have to sign off on something. And technologically, at least 2 or 3, preferably more, should be involved in what it would take to. Sometimes I have trouble zelling people, Robin, right? And it seems harder than, like, and it's definitely not for no $60 million. This is bonkers to me.
This one, so there was one, similar one several months ago, I remember reading about. This is the real trouble with small town banks. This particular story from a few months ago showed a similar lack of sort of financial and corporate governance. A CEO of said small town regional bank transferred $43 million of customer deposits, and as a result of being caught out with one of these scams. And there was no checks and balances. There was simply his authority. And that is a gross dereliction of duty from everybody involved, not just from the CEO, from his team saying, or maybe in this case actually not saying, maybe he just had absolute authority over it, but that is a gross organizational screw up in there.
You know what my hot take is on that one? If we're throwing it back, who the hell signed off on that person's controls? Right? I want some auditing companies that get yoked up and looked at hard. Somebody looked at a program that allows that and said everything's fine here. That should be illegal as well.
Absolutely. Black Hat was a week or two ago. Lots of edgy, scary, highly improbable attacks demonstrated there, as there is every single year, and all of them make the news. We've got tricky web timing attacks are getting easier to use and abuse. But this one is so James Bond, and I don't think it's even worth worrying about in a practical sense. Watch how a hacker's infrared laser can spy on your laptop's keystrokes. This is all the kind of thing that sounds really, really cool and gets attention and grabs headlines, but it's never going to happen to your average person. So kind of be wary of that, really, I would say. Finally, Microsoft's AI can be turned into an automated phishing machine. Less unlikely.
Who would have thought?
Final story here. Ferrari executive foils deep fake plot by asking a question only CEO Benedetto Vina could answer. This was so smart. I will give massive kudos to anyone who has this level of smarts to do this. So ultimately, we're going back into July, mid-morning on a Tuesday back in July. Ferrari executive receives multiple unexpected text messages, seemingly from their CEO, Benedetto Vigna. Talking about big acquisition that's being planned, need your help. The ruse continues. Be ready to sign a non-disclosure agreement that our lawyer is going to send to you. The Italian market regulator and the Milan Stock Exchange has already been informed. Make sure to be ready to cooperate with all of this. Now, this was done initially via text, but ended up on phone call. Now, the voice impersonating Vigna was incredibly convincing, apparently. Spot-on imitation of the chap's southern Italian accent. The deepfake of the scammer here was explaining that they were calling from a different number because there was confidential matters to be discussed. They may face snags with regards to Chinese elements involved in the supposed deal and some unspecified currency hedge transaction that needed to be carried out in order to perform this. So at this point, this executive is getting suspicious. This is odd. So says, sorry, Benedetto, I need to identify you. And this is friggin' genius. And I would encourage anybody to have this level of skepticism when they're being asked strange things by people that they think that they know. Pose the question, what was the title of the book that you had recommended to me just a few days earlier? Straight up, only something that CEO could have answered, and with that call, line went dead, that call's done. But the real problem here, and I've alluded to it, is that this was a deep fake powered scam that went on. A cloned version of Benedetto Vigna's voice used in order to fool people who have authority to provide information or perform actions which would have perpetuated the scam. And deepfakes is what our episode today is all about.